r/AskReddit. What was the weirdest thing the weird kid at your school did? He used to sit alone at lunch. Not because no one wanted to sit with him, but because he used to drag all the other chairs away from the table and leave just one chair for himself. Then he laid out his lunch items around the edge of the table and moved his seat around the table as he ate each item. Took a nap in class while they were asleep, pretended that they were possessed, got on all fours, and started barking at people. He bit one of his friends. This was all done with his eyes closed. When asked why he did that, he responded that it was because he was so in tune with the wolves that they sometimes channel through him in his sleep. He also carried a fake human skull around in his bag at all times. We don't have wolves in New Zealand, and I know for a fact he never left the country. Gotta say, we've had some weird kids. Back in middle school during art, everyone was silent while drawing until this chick straight up moans, "Yes daddy." As our male student teacher walked by, I shit you not, the look of pure embarrassment and stone cold regret was so glued to his face, he would cringe at her for the rest of the semester. Philip was the weird kid. I only heard him speak once, and it was to say yes. I had 2 classes with him. It was so iconic that the whole class froze in disbelief that he spoke. The weirdest thing he would do is randomly fall out of his chair. You'd just hear a loud as thump and him on the ground. Sometimes when he'd walk to another class, he'd take off running, anime style with arms behind him. Philip was a piece of work. By the end of high school he earned the name Price Philip cause he once wore a plastic suit of armor to school and walked around like that all day. He had a rather short furry phase where we wore a tail around. He'd do absolutely nothing all day in class except run emulators on his school provided laptop. Then he got to university and the weirdness kept on going. This one girl would pick green anole lizards up off the ground and make them bite her ears, then walk around saying they were earrings for like 2 minutes until they fell off. She'd also shut herself into lockers a lot then start screaming. Cut some girl's hair and ate it. I saw him again today. He was wearing a trench coat and a cowboy hat. This one dude in my class was an artsy. He did the Hail Hitler thing for the class photo. Another one stapled a huge spider into a plastic cup and paraded that thing around the school. Somebody else read and reviewed hardcore game Angus in very close proximity to my teacher. Beat off into a copy of Catcher in the Rye during a class trip to the big city library and reshelve it. Then he told the whole class about it, proudly, in front of a horrified teacher and librarian. Dude broke into the biology room the day before the year 11s were dissecting rats, got one and took it out of the vacuum sealed bag, and he threw it at a teacher from a 2nd-story building. He was allergic to peanut butter and put peanut butter crackers down his pants. He also peed on my friend's shoe as he was talking to him. Dude would just carry around a couple of those big 2-liter bottles of Mountain Dew and chug that shit down in the middle of class, high school. But he'd drink it like a child with his mouth completely around the opening, so the whole bottle would contract whenever he sucked his precious dew in. The sight and sound was really discomforting to everyone around him. He got very fat in his 20s and now uses social media to complain about how nobody likes or understands him. Finally, in a development that surprised nobody, he got a visit from the type 2 diabetes fairy not long ago. Still does the dew on the reg. Shoved Legos in his pee hole and chased other kids with it. He died from heroin in his 20s. He was a mortician's kid and he used to have an embalming kit. He would go out in the woods and kill animals and practice on them. In kindergarten, this kid we will call Richard, one day we were all told to stand up and say our favorite thing to do, then do it. Richard was the 15th to go and was next to the pet frog and screamed, "I like to eat frogs." He grabbed the frog out so smooth and bit his head. Moaned while grinding herself against her chair during an art lesson. We were 99% sure she was masturbating in front of us. That's awesome. We need more women enthusiastic about tech fields. This was years ago, so I'm a bit foggy on the details. There was a kid that was always super odd and everyone avoided him. He didn't seem to be good at reading the room. He would constantly tell people he was a Martian from space and that he was sent here on a mission. One particular day at the end of a science class and most of the other kids had left the classroom, I think of my classmates had kept telling him that he wasn't a Martian or something like that, to his breaking point. He put a scissors to my classmate's neck and was saying thing about how he could prove it. The teacher immediately put an end to it and yelled at him. I remember him being escorted down the hall rambling about how we would all see that he was a Martian. I guess he was expelled because I never saw him after that. Kinda always wondered if he ever got help or if he still believes he is a Martian. He clearly returned to Mars. Took off with the door of the girls' bathroom. He did not get far. After getting caught almost exiting the school building with the door, he had to stay put until all classes were over, next to the door which was resting on a wall in front of the school's secretary office. The problem with the kid is that he also slashed a classmate's chest with a fucking pen a year earlier. The wound was not severe, but a lot of blood and angry parents were involved. We had a kid in elementary that escaped the gym by running face first into the outside door, naked, screaming, while our P.D teacher had to chase him. He got a few streets away. He also shit in the hallway once. Last I heard from him, he was in a school for gifted or something similar. She was a furry, and so was her boyfriend. She would wear a tail to school and hiss at people. Really bad PD issues with her boyfriend, and she would sometimes masturbate while kissing him. Fucking weird ass bitch. He wore dresses to school, had his own language, his own religion, had a kid at the age of 16, and God knows what the hell he's doing now. Probably a cult leader. This is a difficult one. I have two, one's bad and the other is just damn right fucking strange. 1. There was a kid who I'm sure had learning difficulties, lowest class for everything. He was very small and skinny, but mostly kept himself to himself. That is until year 10th. 15. It turns out he was dating a year 5, 9-10-year-old. He got absolutely terrorized for the last 2 years and reported several times. I'll be honest and say I don't think their weird relationship got anything close to sexual. The guy was severely impaired mentally. 2. This was the edgy emo kid of our school. On the last day of my school life he got in extra early to tie a perfect noose to the rugby post. Vertical bar underscore, vertical bar, dangling from the middle bit. And when I mean a perfect noose, people actually cried when they saw it. He admitted it proudly and got excluded. Weird fucking kid. We had a kid in our class who was overall weird but seemed like a decent dude. He reminded me of Jack Black. He would rock the air guitar, karate kick the school doors at final bell, do oddball impressions of God knows what. In senior year I had cafeteria class with him. That's that class all the weird kids and stoner kids took. Easy credits. We prepared the food served at lunch. One day I had to put some stuff away in our walk-in freezer. I opened the door and saw weird kid sitting on the floor, looking up at me in shock, like he had been busted. He quickly scrambled to his feet, covered himself with his apron, and ran past me into the main area. I don't know what the hell he was doing in there. I'm just glad I could never afford cafeteria food. Bonus story. We used to have this bucket of powder in cafeteria. It was used to soak up the oil spills from the deep fryer. I didn't know this, and the bucket was labeled seasoning salt. I assume it was an old label. One day I was in charge of cooking the batches of fries served at lunch. I sprinkled that shit all over the fries. It wasn't until a week or two later I noticed someone using the same bucket to soak up an oil spill on the floor, and the seasoning salt was in an entirely different place. The kid from my high school is someone everyone here on Reddit is probably familiar with, Wolfie. The guy who did that furry documentary where he says on all levels, but physical I'm a wolf. That kid was a wacko. He wore a tail and a pair of ears to school every day and forced the school to change the name of his school's ID to Wolfie. But all of this was okay, believe it or not. No one really cared that he was weird. It was his attitude about it. He developed this me against the world complex, making it where it was impossible to have a conversation with him about anything because he always got so defensive and started to provoke others. Also he did bite me outside of a Target a year after he graduated because I called him his real name. I was just trying to be polite and say hey. One girl at my school would accept £1 to snort anything like a line of coke. Being bored in math class, I asked her to snort pencil shavings and erasers. She finally chopped up that shit and proudly snorted it up her fat nose. Math suddenly wasn't so boring. Smeared human waste, presumably their own, over the walls of the bathroom. Walked into the classroom hands covered in shit, and sat down in a very nonchalant manner proclaiming innocence when the teacher asked if they are okay.